The day my son and his wife won $53 million in the lottery. What a sentence that is, to say they kicked me out of their house with a look of triumph I'd never seen before. "We don't need your pathetic pension anymore," Ashley sneered, her words sharp like broken glass. "Just go die somewhere else." What they didn't know was that justice was already curled up quietly in my wallet, waiting. "Sweetie," I said, lips twitching, "did you even read whose name is on that lottery ticket?" But let me take you back, because justice always tastes better when it's slow-cooked. 3 weeks earlier, on a gray December morning in Cedar Falls, Iowa, I was doing what I'd done every Friday for 32 years, walking to Murphy's Corner store to buy my lottery ticket. The wind bit through my coat, and the snow crunched beneath my boots, but there was a rhythm to this ritual, and I clung to it the way a person clings to something that still makes sense when so much else doesn't. My name is Dorothy Williams, but folks around here call me Dot. I'm 67, widowed, and for the last 2 years, I've lived in what Ashley, my daughter-in-law, has taken to calling our guest room. Although most guests don't pay $1.300 a month in rent or babysit the grandchildren while cleaning up after everyone. "Morning, Mrs. Williams," Jimmy called from behind the counter. Jimmy Murphy still remembered when I used to bring my son Marcus in for penny candy. He was a gangly boy then, with scuffed sneakers and a cowlick that never behaved. Now, he was a grown man with a 3-car garage and a wife who treated hospitality like a business transaction. "The usual?" Jimmy asked. "You bet," I said, handing over my $5 bill. He printed the numbers I always played: 7, 14, 23, 31, 45, Powerball 18. Each of those numbers was a memory stitched into my life, like a patchwork quilt. 7, the day I married Harold. 14, Marcus's birthday, back when he still looked at me like I was the safest place in the world. 23, our wedding anniversary. 31, the house number of the place we built from dreams and drywall. 45, the years Harold and I spent building a life. And 18 for the day Marcus graduated high school, full of promise and light. Those numbers weren't just digits, they were a timeline of love, loss, and the quiet strength of showing up, year after year, for the people you love, even when they stop showing up for you. "Cross your fingers, Jimmy," I said, tucking the ticket into my purse beside Harold's old driver's license. I still carried it, like a talisman. "Always do, Mrs. Williams. You're due." As I walked home, the wind howled across the empty lots and snow-covered sidewalks. I passed the old white house with black shutters, our house. The new owners had painted it yellow. Harold would have hated that, said the white made it look dignified, like a place where decent people raised their kids. Now, I was staying in the guest room of my own son's house. An upgrade, Ashley called it. A blessing, Marcus insisted, but I knew better. It was a holding pen. A polite purgatory with Pottery Barn sheets. Ashley's BMW was already in the driveway when I arrived. Through the kitchen window, I could see her on the phone, gesturing with sharp, impatient movements, probably discussing her Pilates schedule or complaining about elderly interference in her perfectly curated life. I let myself in through the back door, like help does. I hung my coat on the hook by the laundry room, the same hook where Harold used to hang his overalls after work. The same hook where Marcus once proudly draped his Little League jersey, dirt and glory all over it. "Dot, is that you?" Ashley's voice rang out, a familiar mixture of performative sweetness and underlying irritation. "Just me," I replied, swallowing the part that wanted to say, "Sorry for existing in your curated world of quartz countertops and social media perfection." I'd learned over the past 2 years that surviving in someone else's house meant shrinking. It meant walking softly, cleaning up everyone's messes, and pretending gratitude when what you really felt was invisible. When Harold died, I didn't expect to fall apart, but I also didn't expect to be swallowed. His funeral was on a Tuesday in December. The air smelled like freezer burn and funeral lilies. We'd been married 45 years, a life boiled down to one service and a deli tray. Marcus gave a eulogy, said his father was a provider, a good man. Ashley wore black and dabbed at her eyes like a pro, but I couldn't help thinking how fast grief turns to convenience in the hearts of some. "Mom," Marcus said gently on the ride home, "you can't stay in that big house by yourself." "It's not practical," Ashley chimed in, her voice already on autopilot. At your age, one fall on those stairs, and it's a tragedy. They made it sound like compassion, but I knew. What they wanted was for me to move out so they could sell the house and maybe have a free babysitter for weekends. Still grieving, I agreed. They gave me the guest room, pale yellow walls, and a view of the backyard. Like a comfortable hotel, Ashley had said, fluffing pillows like she was hosting royalty. But hotels come with respect. This came with duties small at first, like dishes and laundry, then errands, then full weekends with the grandkids, then $1,300 a month. But on that icy Friday morning, as I passed the sledding hill near the elementary school, I heard something that made me stop laughter. Wild, unfiltered joy from a group of kids barreling down the hill, their shrieks echoing against the snow. I remembered Marcus like that once, before he started seeing people in terms of costs and assets, and I knew something was shifting. I reached into my purse and touched the slip of paper with my numbers. Maybe, just maybe, those 6 little digits would mean more than memories someday. Maybe they'd mean freedom. When Harold passed, the world didn't just feel emptier, it became smaller, the kind of small where your voice echoes back at you, and no one else hears it. And when you live in someone else's home, even your own son's, it shrinks even more. That first month, I tried to tell myself I was lucky. Lucky to have a warm room, lucky to have family, lucky to still be needed. Ashley made a show of hospitality at first. Your own space, but with us nearby, she said, plumping pillows on the queen bed in the guest room. There were scented candles on the dresser, pale yellow curtains, and a little welcome basket with lavender lotion and herbal tea. The kind of presentation you'd expect from a boutique Airbnb, not from family welcoming home the woman who raised their husband. At dinner, I cooked. Not because they asked at first, but because it felt like a contribution, a way to earn my keep. I cleaned without being asked, folded laundry that wasn't mine, and stayed out of the way when Marcus and Ashley needed privacy. I thought I was helping. I thought I was honoring Harold's memory, being the glue that held the generations together. They never offered to pay for groceries, never once suggested I keep my check for myself, but they thanked me every so often, and that small drop of gratitude kept me going. Until it stopped. The second month, the requests became routines. Could you watch the kids this weekend? We need some couple time. Could you grab the dry cleaning? You're already going out. The cable guy's coming. You'll be home, right? The requests came with smiles, but they were obligations dressed up as options. And each time I said yes, a little piece of me got quieter. I told myself I'd speak up. I told myself it was just temporary, just until I could grieve properly, just until I felt strong enough to live alone again. But time is a trickster. It passes and suddenly, it's not just a few months anymore. It's your life. And Ashley, sweet, ambitious, immaculately manicured, Ashley knew exactly how to frame it all. One morning, over coffee, she sat across from me like a boardroom executive. There were printed papers on the table. She was wearing reading glasses she didn't need. We need to talk about the financial arrangement, she said with a tone that made it clear this wasn't a conversation, it was a transaction. I already felt the knot forming in my stomach. What kind of arrangement? Your share of the household expenses, she replied smoothly. Utilities, food, maintenance. It's only fair you contribute proportionally. There it was, that word again. Proportionally. The corporate lingo she loved to use to make me feel like an employee, like she was running a company, and I was the overhead she hadn't budgeted for. She slid a paper toward me, highlighted in yellow. Rent, $800. Utilities, $200. Food and household supplies, $300. Total, $1,300. Exactly $50 less than my monthly Social Security check. This seems high, I said carefully. I'm not here during the day. I eat very little. I don't. But you use the kitchen, the bathroom, the laundry? Ashley interrupted. And when Emma and Jake visit, you're here all weekend, which increases our costs. Emma and Jake were Marcus's children from his first marriage. I adored them. They were messy and loud and full of questions and light. They called me Grandma Dot and drew me crayon pictures of unicorns and stick figures holding hands. I'd kept every one. But to Ashley, they were dollar signs. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone, not knowing I was folding laundry nearby. "It's exhausting having children here every other weekend," she said to her sister. "And now with Dot, it's like I'm running a boarding house." A boarding house. I signed the financial agreement with shaking hands because I didn't have a choice. Where was I supposed to go? Senior housing had a 2-year wait list. The other option was a moldy studio apartment in a part of town where I wouldn't even walk in daylight. So I paid. Every month, on time. And with every dollar I gave them, I seemed to fade a little more into the background. By fall, I wasn't just helping, I was doing everything. Grocery shopping, cooking every meal, cleaning. When the grandkids visited, I was their primary caregiver, while Marcus and Ashley went off for quality time in wine country or booked spa weekends. I became the family's best-kept secret, their unpaid, unseen help. And they wore their generosity like medals, telling friends how proud they were to have taken in Marcus's elderly mother. Until one night in November, something inside me changed. Ashley was hosting one of her dinner parties, the kind with overpriced cheese boards and twinkling Pinterest lights. I spent the day preparing, like I always did. Cleaned the baseboards, folded napkins, made 3 kinds of bruschetta. I served drinks with a smile, and when I went into the living room to collect glasses, I heard her talking to her friend Jennifer. "It's worked out perfectly," Ashley said with a soft laugh. "Dot handles all the domestic stuff, watches the kids, and her social security covers most of her costs. It's like having live-in help, except she pays us for the privilege." Jennifer laughed. "That's genius. You should write a book, How to Monetize Your Mother-in-Law." And just like that, something clicked. It wasn't just that I was being taken for granted. I was being used. I stood there, holding that tray of dirty glasses, staring at 2 women who thought I was too old to understand what exploitation looked like. I didn't say anything. Not that night. I finished cleaning, locked up the kitchen, and went to my room. My heart was heavy, but my mind was sharp. Because I still had one thing they didn't know about. A piece of paper in my purse. 6 little numbers. Waiting. December arrived with early snow and late patience. That morning, Ashley stood at the dining room table, spreading out blueprints like she was about to launch a real estate empire. "We're converting the basement for you," she chirped. "A mother-in-law suite, privacy, independence, your own little space." She made it sound like a gift, a modern miracle, but I knew better. What she meant was, "We're tired of seeing you in the kitchen." Marcus hovered nearby, hands in his pockets, his eyes avoiding mine. "The contractor says we can have it ready by spring," he offered. "With your own kitchenette," Ashley added, "so you won't have to use the main kitchen anymore." I looked at the blueprint, a windowless box with laminate counters and a half-size fridge. Independence, they called it. But it felt like exile. No, worse, it felt like storage. "What if I don't want to move to the basement?" I asked calmly. Ashley's smile tightened like a drawstring bag. "Dot, we've loved having you here, but we're starting to feel like we need our space back as a couple." Marcus cleared his throat. "If you wanted to explore other living options, we'd understand." Of course. Other options. At my age, with $50 left over each month, the only option they were offering was downstairs, hidden, contained. They had me trapped. So that Friday, I walked to Murphy's Corner store with a purpose in my step I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. My coat was no match for the icy wind, but I barely noticed. I was already bracing myself against something far colder, betrayal. "Rough day for a walk, Mrs. Williams," Jimmy called as I walked in, brushing snow from my shoulders. "I've walked through worse," I replied, handing him my $5. "Same numbers." He nodded and printed the ticket. I took it and slipped it into my wallet, behind Harold's old license, the one I could never quite let go of. I passed the elementary school on the way home. Kids were sledding down the hill, laughing in shrill bursts that cut through the cold. For a moment, I remembered Marcus at that age building snow forts until his fingers turned red. He used to look at me like I was magic. Now he looked at me like I was overhead. Back at the house, Ashley was on the phone with the contractor. "We want the cheapest materials," she said. "It's just for one elderly person. It doesn't have to be high-end. Just for one elderly person." That's what I'd become. Not a woman, not a mother, not a widow who'd spent her entire life holding other people up. Just a unit to be managed. I went upstairs, Saturday by the window, watched snow swirl under the streetlights. In my purse, my ticket waited, unassuming, quiet, and at 10:59 that night, it woke up the world. I was in bed reading a library book when the Powerball segment came on. Tonight's winning numbers: 7, 14, 23, 31, 45, Powerball 18. I froze. No, that couldn't be. I reached for the remote, rewound, watched it again. Those numbers weren't just familiar, they were mine. I scrambled for my purse, fingers trembling as I pulled out the ticket. There they were, black and white, sharp and real, the same numbers I'd played for 32 years. $53 million. For a long time, I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the ticket. This little slip of paper, something I bought every week without fail, was now the key to everything. Not just money, freedom. I thought about waking Marcus, telling Ashley, sharing the miracle. But then I remembered the basement, the guest room rent, the way they laughed about me over wine and crackers like I was a cute little tax write-off. This moment wasn't for them. This was for me. Saturday morning started like any other. The kids were visiting, which meant I was on full grandma duty. Ashley breezed past me in yoga pants and lip gloss. "I'm heading to yoga, and then the salon," she said. "You've got the kids?" "Of course," I said. Same as always. Marcus was in his home office, catching up on work before his tea time. Then it happened. Ashley started tidying the kitchen, her version of helping, which usually meant throwing away something important. "Where are those cereal coupons you clipped?" she called, rummaging through my purse without a hint of shame. "They should be in the side pocket," I said, focused on Emma and Jake's argument over the remote. "Found them. And, oh my God, what is this?" I looked up. She was holding my lottery ticket like it had bitten her. "Did you buy a lottery ticket yesterday?" "I buy one every Friday," I said evenly. "Same numbers, 32 years. Ashley's face went pale. "Do you know what the winning numbers were last night?" She was already Googling before I could answer. Marcus appeared in the doorway, barefoot, shirt half buttoned. "What's going on?" Ashley shoved the ticket into his hands. "Look at it. Look at the numbers." He read the ticket, checked the screen, read it again, then again. The silence in that kitchen was thick enough to chew. "Mom," Marcus said slowly, his voice hoarse. "Do you realize what this means?" I nodded. "Oh yes, sweetheart, I do." The next hour was a blur of hysteria. Ashley called her sister, her friend, her yoga instructor, anyone who would listen. "We won the lottery," she cried. "We're rich." "We." Marcus kept flipping the ticket over like it had hidden terms and conditions. The kids stood in the doorway, wide-eyed. "Are we rich now?" Emma asked. Ashley scooped her up. "So rich, baby girl. We'll never have to worry again." I sat at the table, silent, watching them, like a ghost at my own resurrection. Marcus was already planning. "We need a lawyer and a financial advisor, and definitely call the contractor. We can upgrade the basement plans." The basement. Even with $53 million dangling in their future, they were still trying to move me underground. Ashley chimed in, her voice dreamy. "Or maybe a bigger house. Or, one of those luxury senior communities for with all the amenities." There it was. A more elegant form of exile. "Actually," I said, folding my hands, "there's one small detail we should probably clear up." They turned to me, still giddy, still high on the scent of imagined wealth. "The lottery ticket," I said, gently, "is in my name." And just like that, the air went out of the room. The silence after I said those 7 words, "the lottery ticket is in my name," was not quiet. It was volcanic. A silence that rumbled with disbelief, fear, and something else. Panic. Ashley blinked first. "But, you live here," she said, her voice quivering like a violin string. "We're family. That money, it changes everything for all of us." "No," I replied, rising from my chair with a calm that surprised even me. "It changes everything for me." Marcus looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. I saw it then, the exact moment the math clicked in his head. All the spreadsheets, the debt, the plans, the renovations gone. replaced by one horrifying realization. The help had all the power now. The rest of the day was a blur of damage control. Marcus paced like a hostage negotiator. Ashley went into PR mode, her words sugary, her tone brittle. They tried to regroup, to reframe, to reabsorb me into the family narrative. But I'd seen the script. I knew my role, and I was done playing it. "Let's all take a breath," Marcus said over dinner, which I did not cook. "This is huge news. We're all overwhelmed." "Speak for yourself," I said softly, stirring my tea. "I feel quite clear." Ashley's business brain clicked into overdrive. She said, switching to her client voice, the one she used when she smelled money. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about our living arrangement. The money you contribute each month? That's not rent. We've never thought of you as a tenant." "Is that so?" I asked, meeting her gaze. "Then I suppose you won't mind if I stop paying immediately, since, as you say, I'm just part of the family." Marcus reached out, palms up, like a hostage negotiator facing down a bank robber. "Mom, let's not make emotional decisions. You're talking about $53 million. That's not something anyone should handle alone." "Why?" I asked. "Because I'm old? Or because I'm inconvenient now that I have choices?" Ashley leaned forward, eyes sharp and calculating behind her fake lashes. Managing that kind of money is complicated. Tax law, investments, trusts, it's a lot. I mean, no offense, but at your age, it's easy to get overwhelmed. I smiled. "Interesting that I wasn't too old to babysit your kids, clean your house, and pay you $1,300 a month in not rent." They froze. So, I did what Harold always taught me to do when people tried to condescend. I brought receipts. Literally. From my purse, I pulled out a small notebook. I had started keeping records 6 months earlier, not because I planned this, but because some part of me had known. "Over the last year," I said, flipping through the pages, "I've given you $15,600 in household expenses. I've provided 1,200 hours of unpaid childcare, cooked over 300 meals, cleaned your bathrooms, grocery shopped, did laundry." Ashley's cheeks flushed. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. "In return," I continued, "I've been offered a basement apartment and the privilege of hearing you discuss me as an asset to be monetized." "That's not fair," Marcus whispered. "No," I replied. "Fair would have been letting me grieve my husband without turning me into a silent maid." That night, I went online and started looking for condos. The act felt rebellious and thrilling, like taking off a mask I hadn't realized I'd been wearing. But Sunday morning brought a new strategy from Ashley and Marcus: fear. Ashley was waiting at the kitchen table with a 3-ring binder and a practiced smile. "I've been doing some research," she said brightly. "Did you know 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within 5 years?" I poured myself a cup of coffee and nodded. "Fascinating. Please go on." She did. For 40 minutes. Highlighted statistics, horror stories, doomsday scenarios about elderly women tricked by strangers, swindled by gold-digging boyfriends, ruined by poor judgment. Marcus joined halfway through, rubbing his eyes like he hadn't slept. "Mom," he said gently, "this is too much for one person. We just want to protect you." "From who?" I asked. "Yourselves?" Ashley blinked. "What?" "Because for the past 2 years, I've been the one subsidizing your life." The room dropped 10 degrees. "I've been paying your bills, watching your children, and taking care of your home while you dined out and discussed my share of the expenses like a line item on QuickBooks." Ashley opened her mouth to argue. I slid the binder back toward her. "If you're worried about me making bad financial decisions, perhaps you should have been worried about your own. You're already $47,000 in credit card debt, 2 car loans, a mortgage underwater." Ashley went pale. "How do you know that?" I didn't answer. They didn't need to know about David Richardson. Not yet. Marcus tried to soften the blow. "This isn't about debt, it's about family, about staying together." "Is it?" I asked. "Then why were you planning to move me to the basement?" Neither of them spoke. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. "I'm going to call my lawyer now, to begin the paperwork for the claim, and after that, I'll start looking for a new place to live." Ashley panicked. You wouldn't just leave." I looked at her, at the woman who once hugged me in a church pew and called me mom, and saw nothing but performance. "You did," I said simply. I left the room, closed the door behind me. The voices behind me grew loud, urgent, panicked. But they no longer belonged to me. I had power now. I had a name on a ticket and numbers that had waited patiently for decades. More than that, I had clarity. And dignity? It turned out that wasn't something you lose with age. You just forget how to spend it until you finally remember. Monday morning, Cedar Falls was buzzing like a beehive poked too hard. The local news had gotten wind of the winning ticket being sold at Murphy's Corner store, and by noon, 3 news vans were idling outside Marcus and Ashley's Colonial like vultures, waiting for something to die. Ashley answered the door in full makeup and pearls. "Mrs. Williams is resting and not available for comment," she told the Channel 7 reporter. But as her family, we're so thrilled. It's truly a blessing for all of us. All of us. The entitlement in that one phrase was so thick, I could have choked on it. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed nonstop. Friends from church, former co-workers, even cousin Patricia from Minnesota, everyone wanted to congratulate me, offer advice, or casually inquire what I planned to do with the money. What I planned to do was simple: claim my freedom. I had an appointment at 2 p.m. with David Richardson, the lawyer Harold and I had used for years. As I headed for the door, purse in hand, Ashley intercepted me like a frantic campaign manager blocking a scandal. "You can't go out there. There are cameras, reporters, chaos." "I have an appointment," I said evenly. "Can't it wait?" Marcus had joined her now, both of them forming a human barricade between me and the life I was about to reclaim. "Let us help you manage this. You're not equipped to handle this level of media." "Equipped?" I repeated. "Ashley, I've equipped 2 children for school every day for 18 years straight. Packed lunches, sewed Halloween costumes, buried a husband, survived cancer twice, and balanced a household budget without digital spreadsheets. I am the equipment." And then I opened the front door. The flash of cameras, the shouted questions, the wide eyes, it was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. I wasn't hiding anymore. "Mrs. Williams, how does it feel to win $53 million? I paused beside my car and looked straight into the nearest camera. "I'm grateful," I said, "and I plan to use this blessing to live independently. For the first time in 2 years, I get to make my own choices again." "Is it true you've been living with family?" "I have," I replied, "paying them $1,300 a month in rent, while also serving as unpaid childcare and housekeeper. They were planning to move me to their basement. Now, I'll be moving somewhere else by choice." The questions came faster. I said nothing more. I got in my car and drove off, watching in the rearview mirror as Marcus and Ashley stood frozen on the porch, their perfect facade crumbling like overbaked meringue. David's office was a warm contrast, bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, the faint scent of coffee and old paper. He rose from behind his desk, his face lighting up. "Dorothy," he said, offering a hand. "Congratulations. Harold would be so proud." That name, that man, just hearing it made my throat tighten. "Thank you," I said, easing into the familiar leather chair, the same one where Harold and I once sat to plan our wills, our retirement, our life. "I saw the news," David continued. "Quite a statement you made to those reporters." "Too much?" "Not at all," he smiled. "Sometimes truth needs to be spoken with a microphone." He opened a folder. "Have you claimed the prize yet?" "Planning to drive to Des Moines tomorrow." "Good. We'll go over your options. I recommend the annuity for tax reasons. We'll also set up a trust, and if you're interested, a charitable foundation." We spent the next hour discussing strategy. David explained everything slowly, clearly never once treating me like I was too old or too fragile to grasp my own business. It was the first time in years someone spoke to me, not around me. Then, just as we were wrapping up, David hesitated. "There's something else," he said, tapping his fingers against a second folder. "Something Harold asked me to hold, in case circumstances like this ever arose." I went still. "What kind of circumstances?" David's voice softened. "If your family ever tried to take advantage of you?" I sat up straight. "He knew?" David opened the folder. Harold hired a private investigator 6 months before he died. He suspected Marcus and Ashley were living beyond their means and that they might see your house, your income, you, as a safety net. He slid a report toward me. Page after page of numbers, credit card debt, car loans, a mortgage teetering on default, Ashley's business operating in the red, lines of credit maxed out, payments missed. I stared at the paper as if it were written in a language I never wanted to understand. The words were sharp, cold, brutally factual. All this time, I'd thought they were just careless. But they weren't, they were strategic. Harold wanted you to have this, David said gently, if and when you needed to protect yourself. And this? I pointed to another tab in the folder. David smiled faintly. An insurance policy, $500,000, set aside in a trust under your name, accessible only if things ever went the way he feared. Tears welled in my eyes. He planned for this? He did more than that, Dorothy. He trusted you to handle it. I held the folder in my lap. The weight of it wasn't just in the paper, it was in the truth. That Harold had been watching from behind the scenes, quietly putting cushions beneath my fall. He had protected me after death in the way he always had in life. Quietly, thoughtfully, completely. What now? I asked. David leaned forward. That depends on you. You can walk away with your money and your peace of mind. Or, I looked up, or you can show them exactly how much you know and where it all leaves them. I sat still for a long time. Then I nodded. Call them, I said. Tonight, 7 o'clock. I want them both in the living room. No distractions, no wine, no binders. Are you sure? I looked him straight in the eye. I spent 2 years being invisible in that house. My husband spent his last months watching from the shadows. It's time Marcus and Ashley learn what happens when you underestimate a Williams woman. David smiled. Harold would be proud. And I finally believed it. The living room was too clean, Ashley's signature. She'd lit candles that smelled like sugared fig and adjusted the throw pillows twice before I even sat down. Marcus had brought a bottle of red wine like it was a peace offering or a bribe. They thought this was damage control. They had no idea. Mom, about what you said to the reporters, Marcus began, his voice careful. We understand that emotions were high. I wasn't emotional, I interrupted. I was honest. Ashley opened her laptop with crisp efficiency. We've prepared a financial outline, a proposal that ensures you're secure while still keeping everything manageable. Manageable. Like I was a volatile stock or an estate sale. I didn't respond. I simply reached into my purse and pulled out David's folder. Set it on the coffee table like a bomb I was calmly placing between us. What's this? Marcus asked, already pale. It's your financial profile, I said, compiled by a private investigator your father hired before he died. Silence. The kind that fills every corner of a room. He suspected you were in trouble, that you might try to use me as a financial solution. Ashley's fingers froze on the trackpad. Marcus sat very still, like a child waiting to be punished. He didn't want to believe it, I added, but he also didn't want to leave me vulnerable. I slid the first document forward. You have $47,000 in credit card debt, 2 car loans totaling $18,000, your mortgage is underwater. Ashley's business hasn't turned a profit in 8 months. Ashley gasped, but not in denial. In exposure. How dare you, she said, voice trembling. This is a violation. Like the way you went through my purse? The way you planned to move me to the basement and call it a gift? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Marcus, I said, turning to him. For 2 years, you let your wife turn me into your housekeeper, your unpaid nanny, your monthly rent check. That's not fair, he mumbled. We gave you a place to stay. No, I said coldly. You sold me a room, and you priced it just under my income. That's not family. That's a business transaction. Another paper slid across the table. This is a breakdown of what I've contributed versus what it would have cost you to hire help. You've made over $25,000 off me in 2 years. You didn't take me in. You monetized me. Ashley burst into tears, but they were the kind people cry when they've been caught, not when they're sorry. I'm leaving, I continued. I've already signed a lease at Meadowbrook Senior Community. 2 bedrooms, My own parking space. More privacy and respect than I've had in your house. Marcus looked stunned. Mom, you can't just disappear. You did, I said. When Dad died, you disappeared into guilt and debt and let Ashley turn survival into strategy. Ashley sniffed, trying to regain control. You can't survive this alone. Lottery winners go bankrupt all the time. Which is why I'll be working with David, not you. I reached for the final page. This is confirmation of the trust Harold set up. $500,000, gaining interest, in my name. Marcus's mouth opened, then closed again. He prepared for this, I said, because he knew who I was married to, and he feared what our son might become. They were both silent now, Ashley hollow, Marcus ashamed. But I wasn't done. I gave you 2 years of my life. I gave you the best parts of myself, even after loss. You returned that kindness with convenience. You mistook silence for weakness. I picked up my purse. My voice was calm. Certain. I'll be moving out by Friday. I've arranged movers and transport. You won't have to lift a finger. Ashley stood up. Dot, please. Your family. I looked her in the eye. Family doesn't make profit off your grief. As I stepped toward the door, I paused. Oh, and since you'll no longer have my income helping cover your debts, you might want to cut back on wine tastings and Pilates. I hear financial stress can be challenging for marriages. Outside, the air was crisp and still. In the driveway, my new car waited. Not luxury, just reliable, paid in full. A symbol of control returned. When I looked back through the front window, I saw Ashley collapsed on the couch and Marcus holding his head in his hands. But their crisis? No longer mine. I drove to Meadowbrook with the windows cracked and the radio low. A golden sun was breaking through the clouds, melting last week's frost off the pavement. Justice doesn't always arrive on time. Sometimes it arrives right on your doorstep with 6 familiar numbers printed on cheap paper. Harold used to say, "Justice delayed isn't justice denied, it's justice with better timing." He was right. Again.